You're sitting in a high-stakes meeting, leading a critical or complex initiative, and your proposal is perfect. You love the challenge. But on the drive home, a quiet voice whispers, "Is wanting this seat at the table selfish? Am I putting my career before my faith? Is it okay for me to want to grow and move up? Or has my career become king?" If you truly love your career, but you secretly wonder if your drive is a spiritual liability that makes you a bad Christian, or if you wonder if your ambition in the workplace is actually okay, this episode is for you. Today we're answering a hard question. Is your ambition selfish, or is it God-given? I'm sharing a framework to help you shift out of self-promotion, drop that frantic hustle, and stop apologizing for your ambition. Because your drive is not a mistake. It's by design, and your ambition and your faith do not have to compete. They can coexist. Do you find yourself sanitizing your faith just to fit into the corporate culture? Does your sense of worth rise and fall with your latest performance review? If you're an ambitious Christian woman navigating the friction between faith and work, you are not alone. Hi, I'm Jency, Jesus follower, corporate leader, and recovering overachiever. I spent years winning at work, but wrestling in my heart with the unspoken tensions of a secular workplace, until I learned how to decouple identity from performance, drop that corporate mask, and define success by purpose, not metrics. Welcome to Ambitious Faith at Work, the podcast for high achievers who want to lead with clarity, conviction, and courage, because you shouldn't have to choose between success and soul. So if you're ready to redefine success in a way that's anchored, authentic, and aligned, you're in the right place. It's time to stop hiding in plain sight and start showing up boldly as a light. Before we dive in, I just want to say a huge thank you for being here. This show is for you, and I love connecting with you directly. So email me at hello@jencymayer.com, and my email address is also in the show notes below. Send me the leadership questions you're navigating or the topics that you want to unpack next. And if what you're hearing resonates with you, please hit follow and leave a quick rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a few seconds, but that small action has a big impact. It really is the best thing you could do to support the show and to help ensure that other high achievers are able to find this community. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the Ambitious Faith at Work podcast. I'm your host, Jency, and I'm so glad you're here. Today is a special day because I'm kicking off a 3-part series dedicated to a word that almost every high achiever feels guilty for owning at some point and secretly wrestles to navigate. And that word is ambition. Ambition is a strong desire to achieve success, power, or a goal, and it's the internal drive that motivates you to work hard or improve your status and overcome obstacles. If you've ever wondered if your career drive makes you a bad Christian, or if you've been told you're too intense when you're just trying to drive results, or if you're simply exhausted from waiting for a promotion to be able to impact change around you, this series is your turning point. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to do a deep dive into the lives of 3 biblical leaders to completely transform how you view your drive. First, through the lens of Joseph, we're going to unlock the permission to stop apologizing for your success and recognize that your ambition is God-given. Second, through Esther, we're bringing emotional validation to your strong personality. We're healing that deep frustration of feeling like you have to shrink back just to fit in. And finally, through Daniel, I'm going to hand you the strategic blueprint to take that ambition and actually drive high impact, deep influence right from the seat you sit in today. So get ready to drop that frantic hustle and discover how to hold massive impact in one hand and absolute biblical peace in the other. I'm so excited to kick this series off with you. So today we're tackling the core question many high achievers wrestle with. Is my natural ambition inherently selfish, or is it a God-given gift? This is the intersection of your spiritual identity and your professional reality. You may even ask yourself if you have permission or if it's okay for you to pursue high-level advancement. There's an unspoken rule that many high-achieving Christians feel. It's the idea that to be a godly woman or person, you have to downplay your competence, soften your tone, and keep your head down. We mistake shrinking back for humility. And that happens because we're working off the wrong definition. You see, culture defines ambition as self-promotion. It tells you that drive is about building your own kingdom, chasing a title for the sake of status, and maybe even stepping on others to protect your seat at the table. But God designs ambition as holy stewardship. In His version of ambition, your drive is simply the internal baseline to maximize the capacity, skills, and influence that you've been trusted to manage. The truth is, your ambition is not a design flaw. In fact, it's an intentional part of your design. It's a God-given capacity for impact. The problem isn't that you have drive. It's what your drive is anchored to. It's the motive that matters. Your ambition and faith do not have to compete. They can coexist. I want to take you to the story of Joseph in the Bible, which is a great example of holy ambition and so relatable to us today. So for those of you that may not be familiar, or maybe it's been a while since you read the story of Joseph, let me do a quick recap for you. So there were some interesting family dynamics at the beginning of the story. So Joseph has 11 brothers, so a really big family, and his father was Jacob. And Jacob was pretty outright about his favoritism of Joseph, so much so that he gifted him an ornate robe that all the brothers were very jealous of. And then Joseph, adding to the tension that was already there, had some prophetic dreams about his family. They were not received very well because basically the dreams were about how he would rule over his family one day. So the brothers did not take well to the favoritism and these dreams that were interpreted. So they lied about his death to his dad, threw him into a pit, and ultimately sold him into slavery. Joseph was eventually sold to Potiphar, a royal official, and over time, his role was elevated, and he was managing almost all of the affairs of Potiphar's household. So he moved from being a slave to being a very important person, until he was falsely accused of a crime by Potiphar's wife and then thrown into prison. But while he was in prison, he interpreted dreams for the prisoners, and then years later was summoned by Pharaoh himself to interpret a dream that no one else could. That dream included both good news and bad news, 7 years of prosperity followed by 7 years of famine. And Joseph not only interpreted the dream, but he advised Pharaoh to stockpile grain in the years of abundance and prepare for the famine. So Pharaoh not only freed Joseph from prison because of his interpretation and wise advice, but he also made him the governor of Egypt, the second in command. And ultimately, Joseph saved Egypt and his family from a massive famine and ultimately showed forgiveness to his family. Joseph's story is what holy ambition looks like. He didn't run a ministry. He wasn't a religious leader. He was an operations expert that ran Potiphar's household and then the entire economic infrastructure of Egypt during a crisis. Joseph didn't have to choose between being a faithful servant of God and running Egypt. He did both. He used his competence, his integrity, and his strategic mindset to do both things. He shows us that your ambition and your faith don't have to compete. They can coexist. It is a gift that God has given you, but we have to be careful to ensure it's a holy ambition and not a selfish ambition. Both ambitions will drive you to achieve great things, but they operate on completely different internal compasses. So there's 3 shifts that the story of Joseph teaches us to make sure we're operating from the right place that leads to holy ambition. The first shift is from self-promotion to strategic stewardship. And this is really about your focus. So it's about shifting your focus from building your own personal kingdom to managing the position that God has given you and what He has put in your hands. So selfish ambition centers entirely on the self. It's asking the questions like, how can I lift up my own name or secure my own comfort or make sure others recognize my importance? But holy ambition centers entirely on a higher purpose. It's asking, how can my talents, my resources, and my influence be used to serve a greater good and honor something bigger than myself? But the tension that we all feel is that hustle culture tells us to play political games and fiercely protect our own interest and collect titles. And that feels selfish to us because it is. Selfish ambition shifts to holy ambition when we use it to steward influence rather than just collect a title. Joseph was highly ambitious and a deeply competent leader that was placed in a massive secular system. But his ambition wasn't about self-promotion. It was about the stewardship of his influence. Joseph didn't spend his time anywhere campaigning for a title or building an empire for himself. He focused on optimizing whatever role he was placed in. His ambition was to solve complex problems with excellent execution, and his ambition was to bring his very best. So how can we do this? How can we make this shift? We need to stop asking, how can I get to the next level? And start asking, how do I steward the authority I have right now to bring order and excellence to the role that I'm in? Ambition and faith do not have to compete when your drive is focused on stewardship, not self-promotion. The second shift we see in Joseph's story is dropping hustle for holy discontentment. So I think hustle shows up in three main ways related to our ambition. The first is your source of your drive. So selfish ambition is very fueled by insecurity or pride in comparison. It really feels like a race to prove your worth by being better or richer or more powerful than someone else. But holy ambition, on the other hand, is fueled by calling and gratitude and love. It stems from a secure identity where it views growth as a way to fully steward your God-given potential. A second way that hustle shows up in ambition is our responses to delays and failures. Selfish ambition breaks down into bitterness, anger, or despair because its identity is tied to that win. And so a setback feels like a total destruction and leads to like a desperate urge to strive or to force things to happen. I have found myself being frustrated with things not happening when I want them to or when I believe they should have. But if I'm going to believe that everything happens for a reason or doesn't happen for a reason, then I have to live that out. And living that out looks like holy ambition, which is one that responds with patience, trust, and resilience, and recognizes that seasons of waiting or setbacks are just part of a larger process. The third way that I've seen hustle really show up when it comes to ambition is the treatment of other people. Selfish ambition really views people as tools or obstacles, and it's willing to step on, compromise, or manipulate others to climb that ladder of success. But holy ambition views people as partners. It actively seeks to pull others up alongside them. True success is measured by how much it benefits the collective good and overall community. But the tension we feel in hustle culture is that it tells us that we're only as good as our last result, which may be a rating or our latest deliverable. That breeds a frantic, anxious ambition. And that selfish ambition is fueled by insecurity and that need to constantly prove that you belong at that table. This ends up fueling a comparison where we're running a race against others and we're viewing them as obstacles. And then if things don't go your way, you can be angry or bitter. So it impacts your identity and your security, and it increases your desire to strive or force something. But the truth is that God-given ambition is fueled by a holy discontentment. Many times we don't have the words to describe how we feel like that. Sometimes it's a fire in our belly, but I would describe it as a burden that compels you to take positive action. Holy discontentment is something that can feel very mission-oriented, like you're helping a team or an organization or a client. It's energizing and full of creative problem solving or being strategic. And it's active where you're taking a personal responsibility to initiate and do something about it. It's very different than everyday frustrations where it's more self-centered or you're personally annoyed or inconvenienced. It's something that can be draining or something that's passive where you're waiting for somebody else to take action. That would be an everyday frustration. That would not be something that's fueled by holy discontentment. We see this in Joseph's life where he had a deep desire to see things run with excellence, integrity, and purpose regardless of where he was. So when we go back and think about the three ways that hustle really shows up related to ambition, we start with the source of drive. And when we look at Joseph, we see that his drive was anchored in calling and a secure identity in God. It was completely independent of his shifting circumstances. When he was a slave in Potiphar's house and later a prisoner in the dungeon, he did not claw his way up through frantic self-promotion or cutthroat tactics. Instead, his motivation came from a desire to fully steward his current situation as an act of worship. When he was tempted by Potiphar's wife, his immediate response revealed his drive. He said, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" His secure identity allowed him to work with quiet excellence regardless of the role he was in. When we think about responses to delays and failures, Joseph had several career pivots along the way and unexpected transitions along the way, but he understood that they all fit into a bigger picture. He did not strive and he did not force outcomes. His story began as a shepherd in the pasture. He moved to a slave in a pit, to then a prominent position in Potiphar's house, to then being a dream interpreter in prison, and to finally a governor in the palace. He had lots of twists and turns to his path, but he remained constant and he remained secure and positive, knowing that there was a bigger picture in mind. Third thing that we see related to his ambition is his treatment of other people. We talked earlier how selfish ambition views people as tools or obstacles, but holy ambition views them as partners. When we think about Joseph, when he rose to being second in command in Egypt, he treated people, even those that wronged him, as partners in a larger plan. He used his great power not to have revenge or hoard any wealth, but to build the infrastructure around him that saved so many lives. And when his desperate brothers finally came before him, Joseph chose to pull them up rather than crush them. He famously reframed that entire betrayal through the lens of holy ambition when he said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what's now being done, the saving of many lives." And that's in Genesis 50, verse 20. So when you find yourself in this state of trying to shift from hustle culture to holy discontentment, how do you do that? When you find yourself overfunctioning or staying late, I want you to think about these things. I want you to stop asking, how do I make this thing so flawless that no one can question my value? And I want you to start asking, how do I deliver this with excellence to solve the actual problem in front of me, knowing that my value is already secure? I want you to stop asking, why hasn't this happened for me yet? And start asking, how can I wait well? Stop asking, how do I get ahead of them? And start asking, how do I bring them along? The third shift is to stop apologizing for your ambition and start owning the room. Christian women often feel a tension to shrink back or pass up opportunities because they don't want to seem proud. We've been conditioned to believe that to stay humble, we have to stay small. That's really driven by a sense of false humility. I want to spend a minute talking about the difference between false humility and true humility because it's not really talked about a lot and I don't think it's very well understood. So false humility is focused on self. It's constantly worried about how others perceive you and your modesty. It forces you to put yourself down, deny your talents, and use lowliness as a tool to get attention or validate your safety. It leaves you feeling anxious and defensive because it's rooted in insecurity and fear. But true humility is focused on others. C.S. Lewis once said, "True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less." It doesn't mean you pretend you aren't good at strategy or execution. It means you acknowledge your gifts honestly without bragging and without minimizing them. It breeds confidence because you no longer need external praise to validate your worth. True biblical humility is not shrinking back or hiding your capability. That's actually a form of fear, not faith and not humility. God did not build you with high capacity and leadership for you to minimize it to make others comfortable. God gave you high capacity for a reason. Joseph stepped forward with clarity. He was handed massive scale and he ran his race with absolute confidence. So how do you exhibit this? How do you stop apologizing for your ambition? Well, the next time an opportunity opens up or a complex project needs a leader, don't shrink back or pass up the opportunity. Stop filtering your capability through the lens of false humility. Stop asking, if I step up or speak with conviction and take the lead on this initiative, will people think I'm proud or aggressive? Start asking, God has built me with the high capacity needed to solve this problem. So how can I step into this room with absolute courage to deliver results and serve this team? Today we set out to answer the ultimate question. Is your ambition selfish or is it God-given? And the answer is clear. Your ambition is not a design flaw. It's a God-given capacity for impact. The problem is never that you have drive. It's entirely about what your drive is anchored to. Just like Joseph, you were built with a high capacity to manage complexities of your space, to solve massive problems and optimize whatever room you're placed in. But to run that race with absolute excellence and internal peace, I want to challenge you to do an ambition audit this week of your goals, your deadlines, your meetings, and your deliverables, so you can diagnose what your drive is being anchored to. Maybe there's an inefficient process or workflow that stresses the team out, or cultural concerns around burnout, or there's a product flaw or gap. Those are all good things to solve, but before you engage, use the 3 shifts we covered today to evaluate if your actions are anchored in excellence or if they're anchored in fear and insecurity. So evaluate and determine, number 1, have you moved from self-promotion to strategic stewardship? Are you focusing on managing the influence you have right now rather than just collecting a title? Or number 2, have you traded the anxious hustle of insecurity for a holy discontentment? Are you letting a strategic burden fuel your actions instead of a desperate need that you prove to belong? And number 3, have you rejected false humility in favor of true humility? Are you refusing to shrink back or hide your capability out of fear, and instead stepping forward with confidence to do what's right in front of you? Joseph didn't spend his time campaigning for a title or building an empire for himself. He focused on optimizing whatever room he was placed in. He didn't choose between his faith and his strategy. He did both with excellence. He shows us that your ambition and your faith do not have to compete. They are designed to coexist. So stop apologizing for your ambition and remember that your drive is entirely by design. My prayer for you today is that you go lead with the clarity of who you are, the conviction of what you believe, and the courage to live out your calling in every room you enter. Thanks for choosing to spend a part of your day with me. I'll meet you back here next time. Hey friend, I hope today's episode gave you a little more courage to be yourself at work this week. If it resonated, would you please take 30 seconds and text it to someone you know who's also navigating those unseen tensions at work? And I'd truly appreciate it if you'd leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. It's the best way to help more women realize they don't have to choose between their success and their soul. All right, that's it for today. It's time for me to close those 20 open browser tabs and prioritize my soul over my screen. Until next time, let's stop hiding in plain sight and start showing up boldly as a light.